At 6:47 on June 6, 1944, Commander Samuel Day stood in a confined bridge of the USS Harter, observing 3 Japanese destroyers slicing through the moonlit ocean near Toi Toi, relentlessly pursuing his submarine. 37 years old, with 5 combat patrols and 18 enemy vessels destroyed to his name, he was a seasoned officer. The Imperial Japanese Navy had tasked Minazuki, Hyanami, and Tanakaz with a singular objective: to annihilate the American submarine that had been disrupting their supply routes for 3 weeks. Prior to April 1944, American submarines had generally maintained a cautious distance from Japanese destroyers. A destroyer could reach 35 knots, while a submerged submarine struggled to achieve 9. Between December 1941 and March 1944, Japanese destroyers had successfully sunk 14 American submarines. Not a single American submarine had managed to sink a Japanese destroyer while both were actively engaged in combat. Commander Day altered this grim statistic on April 13. When the destroyer Ikazuchi charged towards Harter's position at full speed, every officer on the bridge anticipated evasion. Instead, he ordered full speed ahead, directly towards the destroyer. At 900 yards, Harter unleashed 4 torpedoes in a spread. 2 found their mark amidships. The destroyer erupted in flames and sank within 5 minutes. Day's radio communique became legendary throughout the Pacific Submarine Force, expended 4 torpedoes and 1 destroyer. Admiral Suimu Toyota, Commander-in-Chief of the Japanese Combined Fleet, found no humor in the report. Between January and May 1944, Japan had already lost 23 destroyers. Operation Ago, the strategic plan to neutralize the American invasion fleet in the Philippines, demanded flawless coordination. The loss of destroyers to submarine assaults jeopardized the entire operation. By late May, Toyota had amassed the mobile fleet at Toi Toi anchorage, comprising 4 battleships, including the Yamato, 9 aircraft carriers, 15 cruisers, and 28 destroyers, the most formidable concentration of Japanese naval power since the Battle of Midway. American codebreakers were aware of their impending deployment. Admiral Charles Lockwood dispatched the Harter to patrol the waters surrounding Toi Toi, seeking targets of opportunity. For 9 days, Harter operated undetected. Then, on June 6 at 300, a Japanese patrol aircraft spotted Harter's periscope wake 15 miles north of Toi Toi. 3 destroyers responded instantly. If you wish to witness how Day's audacious tactics fared against 3 destroyers simultaneously hunting him, please engage the like button. Your support helps us share more untold stories about the submarines that revolutionized naval warfare. Kindly subscribe. Returning to Day's perspective, Commander Day meticulously observed the lead destroyer through his periscope. The Minazuki, a vessel of 1,250 tons, armed with 4 5-inch guns, was rapidly closing the distance, executing evasive maneuvers to thwart torpedo attacks. Trailing closely, 2 more destroyers fanned out in a search pattern, effectively herding Harter into a kill zone. Day skillfully maneuvered Harter's bow directly towards the Minazuki. The range was 1,100 yards. The estimated time to collision was 96 seconds. Every soul within Harter's conning tower understood the peril of a down-the-throat engagement, firing torpedoes directly at an attacking destroyer's bow before plunging beneath its keel. A miss meant the destroyer would unleash depth charges directly upon their submerged position. An ill-timed dive could result in a catastrophic ramming. At 750 yards, Day fired 3 torpedoes. "Take her down 300 feet, he commanded. Harter's bow pitched downward at a 30-degree angle. 40 seconds after the torpedoes were launched, 2 violent explosions rocked Harter, shattering light fixtures. A third detonation lifted Harter's stern 6 feet into the air before it slammed back down. Day ascended to periscope depth. Where the Minazuki had been, only debris and an oil slick remained. The destroyer had fractured in 2 and was sinking. The remaining 2 destroyers were accelerating away, indiscriminately deploying depth charges. Admiral Toyota received the grim news at 900. He immediately ordered 6 additional destroyers to hunt down the elusive submarine. By noon, Japanese patrol aircraft were conducting searches every 20 minutes, but day was far from finished. On June the 7th, at 2:30 in the morning, Harder surfaced to recharge her batteries. The night was inky black, with no moon and heavy cloud cover, presenting ideal conditions. At 3:12, radar contact was established, a single vessel bearing 095, at a range of 8,000 yards, closing rapidly. The contact was moving at 28 knots, undoubtedly a destroyer. The destroyer Hyanami, a 700-ton vessel, had been actively searching for American submarines since 100. Her captain, Commander Hideo Koboki, had received orders to return to base at 300. He was weary. No one anticipated an American submarine would launch a surface attack in the dead of night. Day ordered flank speed. Harder's diesel engines propelled the submarine to 21 knots. He deliberately closed the range, aiming to penetrate the destroyer's radar detection threshold before being detected. At 4,000 yards, Hyanami's radar operator registered a surface contact. It appeared small and was moving fast, likely another destroyer returning to port. At 3,000 yards, Koboki realized his grave miscalculation. It was an American submarine. He ordered flank speed and initiated a ramming maneuver. It was too late. At 2,300 yards, Day fired 4 torpedoes. 2 struck Hyanami's starboard side near the aft magazine. The resulting explosion tore the destroyer's stern completely away. The ship rolled 90 degrees, her propellers still turning as she plunged stern-first beneath the waves. Koboki and 147 sailors perished. The submarine submerged immediately. Japanese patrol aircraft would arrive within minutes. 2 destroyers lost in 24 hours. The Imperial Japanese Navy was deploying all its resources to hunt him. Admiral Toyota was incandescent with rage. 2 destroyers lost in 2 days to the same submarine. He reallocated 8 destroyers from convoy escort duties, forming them into hunter-killer units. Their sole objective: locate and destroy the American submarine operating near Toi Toi. Every destroyer captain received identical directives: maximum aggression, no retreat. Eliminate that submarine. On June the 8th, Day guided Harder south towards the Sibuta Passage, the narrow strait separating Tawi-Tawi and Borneo. Japanese destroyers constantly patrolled this critical waterway. Day was eager to test his mettle, aiming to sink as many as possible before they deciphered his tactics. At 1400 hours, Lookout spotted 2 destroyers steaming in formation, the Tanakaz and an unidentified escort. Both were proceeding at 25 knots, conducting a routine search pattern. Day meticulously studied their movements for 90 minutes. The destroyers followed a predictable zigzag course, altering direction every 8 minutes. This offered him approximately 30 seconds to line up a shot after each turn. He positioned Harder directly in their path and waited. At 16:30, the Tanakaz turned towards Harder's presumed location. The range was 3,000 yards. Day allowed her to close. 2,500 yards. 2,000 yards. 1,500 yards. At 1,200 yards, he unleashed 4 torpedoes at 17-second intervals. The first torpedo missed its target. The second impacted the Tanakaz near the bridge. The third struck the forward magazine. The resulting explosion was so immense that Harder's crew heard it distinctly underwater, even with their hatches sealed. The Tanakaz's bow section detached from the main hull. Both fragments sank within 3 minutes. The escort destroyer immediately reversed course and charged towards Harder's position, unleashing depth charges as she advanced. Divert Harder deep. 400 feet. The depth charges detonated overhead, violently shaking the submarine but causing no critical damage. After 40 minutes, the destroyer abandoned the pursuit and withdrew. 3 destroyers in 3 days. Admiral Toyota was on the verge of a decision that would irrevocably alter the course of the Battle of the Philippine Sea. However, before that, Day had one more destroyer to sink. And this time, he intended to achieve it in broad daylight, with 2 Japanese destroyers observing. On June the 9th, at 500 hours, Day brought Harder to periscope depth, 12 miles southwest of Toi Toi. The sight that greeted him caused every man in the conning tower to hold their breath. Directly ahead, 4 Japanese destroyers steamed in a line abreast formation, actively engaged in submarine detection. Their sonar pings were so powerful that Harder's sound operator could discern them without headphones. Day had 8 torpedoes remaining. 4 destroyers meant he could potentially get 2 shots before they overwhelmed him. He studied their formation through his periscope. The lead destroyer executed aggressive zigzags. The second maintained a steady course. That was his target. At 6:12, the second destroyer altered course directly towards Harder's position. The range was 4,000 yards. Day waited. 3,000 yards. 2,500 yards. At 1,800 yards, he fired 3 torpedoes. All 3 struck the destroyer's port side within 5 seconds of each other. The ship detonated with such ferocity that debris was propelled 300 feet into the air. She rolled over and sank within 90 seconds. The other 3 destroyers immediately converged on Harder's location. Divert Harder deep. 500 feet. Depth charges began exploding above them. 23 in the first 10 minutes. The lights flickered out. Emergency lighting activated. Hull plates groaned under the immense pressure. A pipe ruptured in the forward torpedo room, spraying seawater across the deck. Harder's crew worked in tense silence, effecting repairs as depth charges continued to detonate around them. After 2 hours, the destroyers withdrew. Day ascended to periscope depth. The destroyers were gone. 4 enemy warships sunk in 4 days. Yet, Day's thoughts were not on his accomplishments, but on his dwindling fuel reserves. Harder had consumed 60% of her diesel capacity. She had perhaps 3 more days before needing to return to Fremantle. Admiral Jizaburo Ozawa, commander of the Japanese mobile fleet at Toi Toi, received reports of the attacks at 1400 hours on June the 9th. 4 destroyers lost, 1 submarine. Ozawa calculated the implications. If an American submarine could so easily penetrate his defensive screen, the entire anchorage was compromised. He dispatched an urgent dispatch to Admiral Toyota. The mobile fleet required immediate departure from Toi Toi. The Americans knew their location. Toyota concurred. Operation Ago necessitated the mobile fleet's interception of the American invasion force near the Marianas, but the operation was not scheduled to commence until June the 15th. A departure 6 days early meant his carriers would arrive without adequate reconnaissance. His destroyers would be dispersed across multiple patrol zones, and his supply lines would remain unestablished. However, remaining at Toi Toi with an American submarine systematically hunting his destroyers was tantamount to suicide. On June the 10th, at 800 hours, the Japanese mobile fleet departed Toi Toi. 4 battleships, 9 carriers, 15 cruisers, and 24 destroyers set a course northeast towards the Philippine Sea. American codebreakers intercepted the movement orders within hours. Admiral Raymond Spruance, commander of the 5th Fleet, adjusted his battle plans accordingly. This premature departure afforded the American carriers an additional day to position themselves for what would become the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Day was unaware of these unfolding events. On June the 10th at 16:30, he spotted 2 more destroyers patrolling north of Sabuta Passage. Both were moving at high speed, executing an aggressive search pattern. Day possessed 5 torpedoes remaining, sufficient for one final attack. At 17:15, he fired 3 torpedoes at the lead destroyer. One struck near the bow. The destroyer slowed but did not sink. The second destroyer immediately charged towards Harder's position. Day launched his final 2 torpedoes. Both missed their mark. He was out of torpedoes, defenseless, with a Japanese destroyer bearing down on his position at 32 knots. Order emergency deep. Harder's diving planes bit hard, driving the submarine downward at maximum angle. 300 feet. 400 feet. 500 feet. The destroyer passed directly overhead, her propellers churning the water so fiercely that Harder's crew could hear the blades through the hull. Then, silence. The destroyer was circling back. Day recognized the pattern. The destroyer would make multiple passes, dropping depth charges on each run until either the submarine surfaced or imploded. Harder had no torpedoes to retaliate, no means to inflict damage. His only recourse was to endure the onslaught and hope the destroyer exhausted her depth charge supply first. The first pattern was dropped at 17:23. 6 depth charges exploded in a tight cluster around Harder. The submarine rolled 15 degrees to starboard. Light bulbs shattered. Crewmen grasped for handholds. A second pattern detonated 2 minutes later, closer this time. The explosions lifted Harder's stern and slammed it back down. Cork insulation rained from the overhead. A hydraulic line ruptured in the control room. For 90 minutes, the destroyer relentlessly pursued Harder. 42 depth charges were deployed. Most detonated too shallow or too far away, but 3 came close enough to crack gauge glass and spring minor leaks. Day maintained Harder at 500 feet, proceeding at 2 knots, minimizing noise. Finally, at 1900 hours, the destroyer withdrew, having expended her depth charge load. Day waited another hour before surfacing. The ocean was empty, no destroyers, no patrol planes, only darkness and the hum of diesel engines recharging batteries. Harder limped southward towards Fremantle at 8 knots, conserving fuel. She arrived on June the 26th, concluding a 17-day patrol. The moment Harder tied up at the pier, Admiral Charles Lockwood was waiting. He had been monitoring Day's patrol reports via radio intercepts. 5 destroyers engaged, 4 confirmed sunk, 1 damaged. In 12 days, this represented the most successful anti-destroyer patrol in submarine warfare history. Lockwood immediately awarded Day the Navy Cross. Then he posed the question every submarine commander dreaded: can you do it again? Day's response was unequivocal. Give me torpedoes and I'll sink 10. Harder's crew spent July in Fremantle undergoing repairs and resupply. Day utilized this period to train new crew members in down-the-throat attack tactics. By late July, every submarine commander in the Pacific had meticulously studied Harder's patrol reports. The tactic proved effective. Between June and August 1944, American submarines sank 14 Japanese destroyers, employing variations of Day's aggressive approach. On August the 5th, Harder departed Fremantle for her 6th war patrol. She was assigned to operate as part of a 3-submarine wolf pack, alongside the USS Hato and USS Hake. Commander Day was in command. Their mission was to patrol the waters west of Luzon and target Japanese shipping en route to the Philippines. The patrol commenced auspiciously. On August the 21st, the wolf pack intercepted a 16-ship convoy off Palawan Bay. In a coordinated assault, they sank 4 cargo vessels, totaling 22,000 tons. On August the 22nd, Harder and Hato engaged 3 coastal defense vessels off Baton. All 3 were sunk. Harder was credited with destroying 2 frigates, Matsuwa and Hibui. By August the 23rd, Hato had expended all her torpedoes and withdrew from the patrol. This left Harder and Hake operating together off Daesal Bay on Luzon's western coast. Japanese intelligence had tracked the wolf pack's movements. They had an approximate fix on the American submarine's operating area and had deployed something special to counter them. At 4:53 on August the 24th, the USS Hake submerged 4 miles off Hermosa Island. Through her periscope, she could observe Harder on the surface, 4,500 yards to the south. Both submarines were preparing to engage a damaged Japanese destroyer that Hato had torpedoed the previous day. Suddenly, Hake's sonar operator detected something that sent a chill down his spine, echo ranging. Close. Getting closer. Two Japanese escort ships were closing on Harder's position. CD-22 and the minesweeper PB-102, both moving at 18 knots, were conducting an active sonar search. They had been hunting American submarines for 3 days. Japanese intelligence had intercepted radio communications between Harder, Hake, and Hado during the Palawan Bay attack. They knew the Wolf Pack was operating somewhere off Daesal Bay. Hake's captain immediately ordered his submarine to dive deep and maintain silence. He watched through his periscope as the two Japanese vessels approached Harder. At 5:20, Hake's radio operator attempted to warn Harder. No response. Either Harder's radio was off, or she was already preparing to dive. At 5:30, Harder executed a crash dive. The Japanese ships were less than 2,000 yards away. Day had spotted them at the last possible moment. He plunged Harder down rapidly, ordering flank speed and maximum dive angle. The submarine descended at 35 degrees, her diesel engine still running as she submerged, leaving a massive bubble trail on the surface that clearly marked her location. The CD-22 sonar operator had a perfect contact, range 1,200 yards, depth approximately 200 feet. Still diving, the escort ship's captain ordered an immediate depth charge attack. At 5:47, CD-22 made her first pass over Harder's position and dropped the full pattern of depth charges set to detonate at 250 feet. The explosions bracketed Harder perfectly. At least 3 detonated within 50 feet of her hull. The submarine's pressure hull cracked near the after torpedo room. Seawater flooded in under tremendous pressure. Harder's stern flooded completely within 90 seconds. The submarine's bow rose sharply as the stern dragged her down. Day ordered all ballast blown. Emergency surface. The compressed air system fought against the flooding, but there was too much water in the stern compartments. Harder could not reach the surface. At 5:52, CD-22 initiated a second depth charge run. This pattern impacted even closer. The explosions ruptured Harder's main pressure hull in multiple locations. The control room flooded. All electrical power failed. Emergency lighting went dark. At 600 feet, well below her maximum operating depth, Harder's hull began to implode. Bulkheads collapsed under the immense pressure. Compartments were crushed like tin cans. The submarine was gone in less than 3 minutes from the initial depth charge impact. At 600, CD-22 and PB-102 reported a successful kill. Large quantities of oil, wooden debris, and cork floated to the surface. The Japanese ship circled the area for 2 hours, dropping additional depth charges to ensure the submarine's destruction. They recovered no survivors. All 79 men aboard Harder perished, including Commander Samuel Day and radioman Calvin Bull, who had earned a Bronze Star for the destroyer kills in June. Every officer and sailor who had contributed to making Harder the most feared submarine in the Pacific was lost. The USS Hake remained submerged until nightfall. Her captain filed a contact report detailing Harder's loss. The message reached Admiral Lockwood at 800 on August the 25th. Lockwood immediately suspended all submarine operations in the Daesal Bay area and ordered all boats to withdraw to safer waters. The news reached the United States in early September. The Navy Department announced that the USS Harder was presumed lost with all hands. No further details were provided, as submarine operations were classified. The American public would not learn the full account of Harder's fifth patrol until after the war concluded. However, the Japanese were aware. Admiral Toyota received the report on August the 26th. The submarine that had terrorized his destroyer fleet for 3 months was finally eliminated. He ordered a commendation for CD-22's crew. What Toyota did not comprehend was the extent of the damage Day had already inflicted and how his 4 days in June had fundamentally altered the course of events. The Battle of the Philippine Sea commenced on June 19, 1944, 9 days after Harter had sunk her fourth destroyer off Toi Toi. Admiral Ozawa's mobile fleet engaged Admiral Spruance's Fifth Fleet in what would become the largest carrier battle in history. 15 American carriers faced 9 Japanese carriers, with 900 American aircraft against 430 Japanese aircraft. The battle raged for 2 days. American pilots shot down 376 Japanese aircraft, while losing only 30 of their own. American pilots dubbed it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. 3 Japanese carriers were sunk, Taiho, Shokaku, and Hyo. 2 battleships were damaged, and 1 cruiser was sunk. The Imperial Japanese Navy suffered the loss of 75% of its carrier air groups and would never fully recover. However, the battle might have unfolded differently had Admiral Ozawa arrived on schedule. His original plan called for the mobile fleet to depart Toi Toi on June 15. This would have afforded his reconnaissance aircraft 4 days to locate the American fleet before the battle commenced. His carriers would have been fully provisioned, his destroyer screens meticulously organized, and his battle plan coordinated with land-based aircraft from the Philippines. Instead, Harter forced his hand, compelling an early departure 6 days ahead of schedule. Ozawa arrived in the Philippine Sea on June 14, his fleet dispersed across 200 miles of ocean. His reconnaissance aircraft had depleted their fuel reserves during the accelerated departure and were incapable of conducting thorough searches. The destroyer flotilla was still recovering from anti-submarine operations near Toi Toi, and their logistical vessels were delayed by 3 full days. When American naval aviators located Ozawa's armada on the 19th of June, his aircraft carriers were in the process of deploying their planes. The combat air patrol was understaffed. The fleet's arrangement was chaotic. The immense Turkey Shoot of the Marianas occurred because Ozawa was unprepared. And Ozawa was unprepared because Day had annihilated 4 destroyers over a period of 4 days, instilling in the Japanese the conviction that Toi Toi presented an unacceptable risk. Admiral Lockwood grasped this situation instantly. In his post-war personal account, he stated that Harter's 5th deployment was the most critical submarine undertaking of the entire Pacific conflict. The destruction of 4 destroyers meant 4 fewer escort vessels safeguarding Japanese aircraft carriers. However, compelling the mobile fleet to depart prematurely caused the comprehensive Japanese military strategy to unravel before the initial engagement. Between December of 1941 and August of 1944, American submarines annihilated 1,314 enemy vessels, aggregating 5.3 million tons. These included Japanese merchant ships, cargo haulers, fuel tankers, and troop carriers, but remarkably, only 29 warships. The majority of submarine commanders deliberately avoided engaging warships, deeming them excessively perilous, too heavily armed, and too swift. Day demonstrated that submarines possessed the capability to successfully hunt warships. His down-the-throat maneuver proved effective because it directly contradicted every assumption Japanese destroyer captains held regarding submarine conduct. Submarines were not expected to charge destroyers, they were meant to retreat. When Harter initiated its assault, Japanese captains faltered. This hesitation cost them 12 seconds. 12 seconds was sufficient for torpedoes to cover the intervening distance and inflict damage. By the conclusion of the war, American submarines employing these innovative tactics had sunk 214 Japanese warships, comprising 4 aircraft carriers, 1 battleship, 9 cruisers, and 38 destroyers. The remaining vessels were submarines, escort ships, and patrol craft. Japan commenced hostilities with 63 destroyers and subsequently constructed 49 more throughout the war. American submarines were responsible for sinking 38 of these. Harter alone accounted for 4 of those in a span of 4 days. On the 27th of March, 1946, President Harry Truman bestowed Commander Samuel Day's Medal of Honor upon his widow, Edwina Dewey, during a ceremony held on the White House grounds. The official commendation stated, in part, This exceptional record of 5 crucial Japanese destroyers sunk through 5 close-range torpedo attacks stands as a testament to the courageous combat spirit of Commander DY and his unwavering crew. The Navy subsequently christened a destroyer escort in his honor, the USS DY, which was commissioned in 1954 and remained in service until 1972. Harder was awarded the Presidential Unit Citation for its initial 5 combat deployments and received 6 battle stars for its service during World War II. Its operational motto, "Hit him harder," became an iconic phrase throughout the submarine force. However, its true enduring impact lay in the tactical revolution it initiated. Prior to Harder's 5th patrol, submarine doctrine prioritized stealth and evasion. If a destroyer detected your presence, the prescribed action was to flee. This involved submerging to extreme depths, engaging silent running protocols, and hoping that depth charges would miss their mark. Directly confronting destroyers in combat was considered an act of suicidal folly. The mathematical probabilities were overwhelmingly unfavorable. Destroyers were faster, better armed, and specifically engineered for submarine annihilation. Deal fundamentally altered those probabilities by recognizing a singular, critical aspect of destroyer captains' psychology. They anticipated submarines would attempt to escape. When a submarine charged directly at them instead, the destroyer captain was compelled to make an instantaneous decision based on incomplete intelligence. The options included turning port, turning starboard, maintaining a direct course, or opening fire with their guns. All of this transpired while torpedoes closed the distance at a speed of 46 knots. Most captains made the incorrect choice. By the time they recognized their error, the torpedoes had already impacted. Between June and December of 1944, 12 American submarines adopted these assertive combat strategies. The USS Tang managed to sink 2 destroyers. The USS Trigger accounted for 1. The USS Barb successfully sank 1 destroyer and inflicted damage on another. The USS Flasher utilized down-the-throat attacks to eliminate 3 escort vessels. The success rate of this tactic reached 63%. For every 5 assaults, submarines succeeded in sinking 3 destroyers and incapacitating an additional 1. Only 1 out of every 5 attempts failed entirely. Japanese destroyer captains eventually adapted their tactics. By the latter part of 1944, they had devised countermeasures. When a submarine charged, destroyers would turn away and execute a circling maneuver, forcing the submarine to expose its broadside to torpedo attacks from other destroyers within the formation, or they would deliberately reduce speed, allowing the torpedoes to pass harmlessly ahead while simultaneously closing the distance for a potential ramming maneuver. While the tactic remained somewhat effective, its success rate diminished to 40%. Concurrently, American submarine losses escalated. Between August and December of 1944, 9 submarines were lost due to destroyer attacks. The Tang met its end on the 24th of October when one of its own torpedoes malfunctioned, circled back, and struck the submarine. Harder was lost on the 24th of August. The Darter ran aground on the 23rd of October while pursuing a destroyer. Nevertheless, even with increased losses, submarines were achieving unprecedented success in sinking enemy vessels. The aggressive tactics were proving effective. Admiral Lockwood faced a momentous decision: recall all submarines and revert to defensive strategies, or tolerate higher attrition rates in exchange for the complete disruption of Japan's vital convoy system. He opted for an aggressive approach. Between January and August of 1945, American submarines operating under these more aggressive patrol doctrines annihilated 437 Japanese merchant ships and 53 warships. By August, Japan possessed less than 25% of the merchant shipping tonnage it had at the outset of the war. The home islands faced severe food shortages, factories ceased operations due to a lack of essential raw materials, and the Imperial Japanese Navy struggled to fuel its remaining vessels. Day never witnessed the full consequences of his actions, as he perished 3 months after achieving his most significant triumph. He was killed by the very type of escort vessel he had spent a year perfecting methods to destroy. However, his tactical innovations persisted. Every submarine commander serving in the Pacific meticulously studied Harder's patrol reports. Every attack plan incorporated references to the down-the-throat doctrine. Every torpedo firing solution included precise calculations for engaging charging destroyers. On the 22nd of May, 2024, 80 years after its sinking, an underwater exploration team, spearheaded by Tim Taylor and the Lost 52 Project, located the wreck of the Harder in the South China Sea. The submarine rests upright on the seabed at a depth of 3,750 feet, 12 miles west of Dale Bay, the site of its final dive. Its pressure hull remains largely intact, with the exception of damage from depth charges near the conning tower. The wreck is designated as a protected war grave, and no salvage operations are permitted. However, the discovery of the Harder signifies more than simply locating a submerged vessel. It provides a sense of closure for families who had awaited answers for 80 years. Furthermore, it serves as a tribute to the 79 men who irrevocably altered the course of naval warfare. Today, Harder's narrative continues to resonate in unexpected ways. At the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, instructors teaching submarine tactics still utilize the down-the-throat attack as a compelling case study in aggressive warfare. This is not because modern submarines employ the same maneuver. Contemporary torpedoes are wire-guided and do not necessitate such close-range engagements, but rather because this approach illustrates a fundamental principle: when your adversary anticipates your retreat, an aggressive charge often yields superior results to concealment. The Naval History and Heritage Command meticulously preserves Harder's complete patrol records within its archives. These documents include every radio transmission, every calculated torpedo firing solution, and every recorded depth charge attack. Researchers delving into submarine warfare in the Pacific can precisely trace the evolution of his tactics across his 6 combat patrols. His reports depict a commander who learned from every engagement, continuously refined his methods, and ceaselessly sought opportunities to destroy additional enemy vessels. Commander D's final resting place is Arlington National Cemetery, located in Section 59, grave number 874. His headstone bears his rank, his service dates, and a singular inscription, Medal of Honor, Destroyer Killer. Relatives of the Harder's crew visit annually on August 24, the anniversary of its sinking. They lay flowers and recount stories of grandfathers and great-uncles who perished at the ages of 22, 25, or 37, fighting a conflict most never anticipated surviving. The 79 men aboard the Harder hailed from 38 different states, including farmhands from Iowa, factory laborers from Michigan, and college graduates from California. They volunteered for submarine duty fully aware of the exceptionally high casualty rates. 22% of submariners who served in World War II lost their lives, the highest proportion of any branch of the American military. They understood the grim odds but served nonetheless. Calvin Bull, the radio operator who earned a Bronze Star for his crucial role in sinking 5 destroyers, was 24 years old when he died. John Mao, who survived the Harder's sinking and later attained the rank of admiral, dedicated 50 years to recounting their story, passing away in 2010 at the age of 90. The last surviving crew member of the Harder, Paul Bryce, died in 2022 at the age of 98. With his passing, no one who served aboard the Harder remains alive to share their experiences firsthand. This underscores the profound importance of preserving narratives like these. These men left behind patrol reports, radio communications, and Medal of Honor citations. However, these documents cannot fully convey the visceral experience of charging a destroyer at maximum speed, the terrifying resonance of depth charges exploding overhead, or the agonizing realization as one's captain made life-or-death decisions for the entire crew. The official historical accounts inform us that the Harder destroyed 4 destroyers in 4 days. They do not articulate the pervasive fear, the profound exhaustion, or the absolute certainty that this particular patrol might be their final one. If this account has resonated with you as deeply as it has with us, we kindly request you to show your support by clicking the like button. Each like signals to YouTube that this story deserves wider dissemination. Please subscribe and enable notifications. We are dedicated to unearthing and sharing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Narratives of submarine commanders who revolutionized naval warfare through audacious tactics, tales of genuine individuals and their extraordinary heroism. Please leave a comment immediately, informing us of your viewing location. Are you watching from the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, or Australia? Our global community spans the entire world. You are more than just a viewer, you are an active participant in ensuring these memories endure. Share your location and let us know if any family members served in the military. Your presence matters. We extend our sincere gratitude for your viewership and for ensuring that Commander Samuel D.Y. and the 79 brave souls of the USS Archer are not silenced by obscurity. These men deserve to be remembered, and your engagement is instrumental in making that a reality.